it is that time of the year when I can no longer film on the porch because it's 36 degrees and I have to go and film in my badly lit, half finished library. So I'm inside right now with this first winter review because it was way too cold to mess with that. I might try to move to the back porch at some time when the heater gets turned on out there, but it was 50 degrees out there too, so I'm not going out to the enclosed porch either. But I finished In the Houses of Their Dead by Terry Alford. It is kind of a deceptive book in it advertises itself about this, you're going to see how fate and spiritualism and all this sort of stuff was tied up in the booths and Lincoln's lives and all this sort of thing. Unfortunately for the book, they didn't really have that tied up, mainly because it's pretty decently documented that while Lincoln had some sort of spiritualism connections to different things, and Mary much so did after Lincoln died, that he was kind of more not really interested in religion on the whole. And it was something that he was not really, from any standpoint, either Christianity or spiritualism or anything like that. He just was not really a big proponent of any of it. He just kind of had his own sort of but his own sort of very particular beliefs that didn't really fit into anything. And because of that, this author has a really hard time of trying to tie all these things together. Now, the Booths, yes, they did have a lot of connection to a lot of different things. This was really more of an interesting book about the whole Booth family, and I've read some other books about John Wilkes and about Edwin and all the background of that family and what sort of strange sort of situation they kind of had in their lives and connections with different things, and the way that some of the family members went. But this book is it was a good book, but it was a good book not in the way that I think that it advertised itself as a good book. So it was kind of caught me a little off guard about how it really, with Lincoln, it didn't really end up talking about spiritualism a whole lot. Simply because there's not that much documented that really connects him to that a great deal. There's a lot of apocryphal stories and different things, but there's not a whole lot of any hard proof evidence of what he thought about certain stuff, even after his children died. And even though there is with Mary, they really didn't go into that much. This author did not really focus on Mary a whole lot, other than the fact that, yes, she did have a lot of emotional, mental issues, but didn't really go into detail about her connection to all of that. And I wonder if it's because it was basically a lot of scammers taking advantage of her. So if you're really into the spiritualism stuff, that's probably not a route you want to go down, because it is very, very clear that people were taking advantage of a grieving, rather unstable woman. So the focus really is on the Booth family more than anything else, and John Wilkes' belief that he was sort of born under a bad star and all this sort of stuff, and that he was unlucky and this, that, and the other. I would say luck is kind of his own making in all of this, because many of the things that happened to him were sort of his own doing and his own choices in different matters. So it's hard to blame luck when you're making some very hard choices. You're making some very, very streamlined choices here that I don't know where you thought that was going to go one way or the other. But that being said, the main outcome is the interest in this one person that keeps getting brought up a lot. And I'm not even really sure why they keep bringing him up. Let me make sure I got his first name right. I'm not even sure why they keep bringing him up, simply because he's not really that much a part of the spiritualism stuff. But he was very good friends with Edwin Booth, and it's Adam. Adam Badeau is a very interesting character in all of this. Wow. I almost feel like I need to find a biography about him, because this dude, he was wild. He has this tendency that a lot of people would call him an absolute, he's a hanger-on. He is a hanger-on. And a lot of people around famous people would call him a leech. And he is in a lot of ways. He's one of these people who he's not wanting anything monetarily or in any sort of way, like physically out of stuff, but he certainly is wanting the attention from the famous people. The first one he hangs on to is Edwin Booth, and Badeau, as they kind of talk about him in here, seems like he had an alternative lifestyle at the time and was very attracted to Edwin Booth, and has this weird, they almost have this weird menage a trois type thing going on with him and his wife, and Edwin and his wife and Badeau. Edwin was not interested in Badeau that way. I think he just sort of liked having a cheering section, a kind of sycophantic guy who's just sort of following you around talking about how wonderful you are all the time. And I think Edwin's wife was just sort of, there's that friend of his and the whole thing. But it is a very strange relationship that Badeau kind of gets involved here, and it's like this threesome they are for a while of just traveling around and doing different things and hanging out. Then Badeau, he gets involved in the Civil War, sort of by accident, kind of ends up being a hero in this one situation, and he ends up then becoming a hanger-on of Ulysses S. Grant, and following him around and talking about how he's the best thing that he's ever, and just kind of, it's like these people who just sort of thrive off the basking in the reflected glory of somebody else. And Badeau follows Grant around. Grant thinks he's, great. Grant was not a great judge of character anyway, God love him. But one of the most interesting things is then Badeau kind of does a weird switch up here at the end, that Ulysses S. Grant, he was doing a lot of editing and different things for Grant's book. Grant was writing an autobiography. Grant knew that he had throat cancer and was very close to death. He was trying to write this book to provide for his wife and his family. Badeau was helping him edit and write this book. Then all of a sudden, Badeau, who's been doing this and has been this sort of hanger-on for a long amount of time, who did not expect much out of anything, all of a sudden he switches around and says that he expects, it was either $9,000 or $19,000, and he expected rights on the book, and all this sort of stuff that kind of in the clutch, Badeau sort of makes himself a very unsavory type of person. He makes himself a little bit the villain here. And Grant was apparently very, very torn up about this, because he thought this was one of his friends. He trusted this man. And now this man is rolling in saying, here's all the list of all the money that I want to have from the sales of this book, which I know is going to be what's supporting your family after everything that happens. But I expect to be paid for all of this stuff. But Al always said that he was justified in asking for all this money, and he was doing all these edits, and he was doing all this research and different things for this book and putting it together, because he was like, well, Grant can't even do this, and it was a weird 180 for somebody who'd been kind of a bootlicker up to this point of some famous people. For him to suddenly decide in the clutch that he wants a lot of monetary compensation is a strange turn. And Dad did end up getting married and different things. And it's just a strange psychological study of this person who is thrown in here as kind of a person that was involved with the Booths a little bit, had them get involved in spiritualism and stuff like that, which is why he's mentioned. But I do believe Alford kind of goes into all these kind of tangents about Adam Badeau, because he really is the interesting one in all of this, because you're like, what is this man doing? First off, he's like this level 10 clinger, and now he's doing this sharp 180 to want a lot of monetary compensation for it. It's strange. It's a strange situation, and he's the one I actually come out here wanting to know more about, because his whole story and deal seems a bit interesting in all this. Lincoln's actually kind of almost an afterthought in this book to some degree. The Booths are talked about a lot, but Badeau is the one with the plot line that you're really sort of invested in. And he kind of brings up some other people too that then he just drops talking about at different points. I'm not even sure exactly why some of these were, except they were people who were into the spiritualist movement who were friends with the Booths, which that's almost neither here nor there when it comes down to the story. But yeah, so the thing that comes away with that is I would like to find out a little more about this Adam Badeau character, and what on earth was going on through that whole set of relationships and strangeness. So it's just kind of it was a subplot, it's not a plot, but it was a sub information in a book about one topic that kind of went a whole nother route, that I was like, maybe you should have focused your book on this dude and what was happening here, because it's a lot more interesting than anything else that's happening in this book right now. I don't care about the scam artist, like spiritualists happening at this point. I care about this dude and the clingy situation and how he went on somebody's honeymoon with them and how that's all really, really weird. But yes, I would recommend this book if you're wanting it to be about spiritualism and all sorts of things like that. Not necessarily. If you want to go down a rabbit hole with a hanger-on of these different famous people at this time, go right on down here, because it gets a little wild with the one dude. And as you can see, my library is not, I don't have shelves everywhere, so I've just got books stacked all over in part of an empty room. But we've moved inside now because it's too cold to stay outside anymore.